It was shown in the previous video how Sabianism influenced Islam. In this video, it will be shown that the influence was so significant that for the people during Muhammad's time, there was a period when no distinction was made between an early Muslim and a Sabian. This is acknowledged in some of Islam's most sacred texts. For example, in Sahih al-Bukhari 344, as the hadith is lengthy, the relevant sections are shown here where Muhammad was described as a Sabian. In the brackets it says Sabian means with a new religion, but this is a secondary interpretation that has been added by the website source. After all, the Sabian religion existed before Islam and has been mentioned in the Quran as a separate, already established religion. The Quran did not take its secondary meaning of someone who has accepted a new religion. Nevertheless, Muhammad nor the Muslims ever denied that he was not a Sabian. If anything, they agreed and seemed to acknowledge that he was. Nor were they offended when Muhammad was called a Sabian. This is because the woman did not describe him as a Sabian in a pejorative way, which is the reason why no one reprimanded her. She would only have said this if she thought he was one. His beliefs and practices could not have been much different from Sabianism. Toward the end of the lengthy hadith, she again describes Muhammad as a Sabian. Only at the end of the hadith it says Sabians are a sect of people who recite the Psalms, indicating they are a separate, distinct religion from Islam. There are other evidence from within Islam's sources implicating Islam with Sabianism. Here is another proof that in early Islam, Muslims were indistinguishable from the Sabians. It is found in Sahih al-Bukhari 4372 at the end of the lengthy hadith, which is about a story on Thumama's conversion to Islam. He was asked if he had become a Sabian, but he denied he was one. When the tribe Banu Jadima of Taif and Mecca announced to Muhammad's companion Khalid ibn Walid of their conversion to Islam, they did so not by crying out that they had become Muslims, rather they said, quote, "We have become Sabians." Reference to this incident is found in many Islamic sources, including Sahih al-Bukhari 7189. Khalid killed them anyway, and Muhammad expresses regret for their killing, because by them saying they are Sabians, according to Islamic commentaries and apologetics at least, it is understood they meant they have come out of their old religion and adopted a new one. In this case, they accepted Islam, so they should not have been killed by Khalid. Muslim scholar Muhammad Hussein Haikal, in his book The Life of Muhammad, writes on page 443 that Khalid killed them even though he had been told that they had converted to Islam. He writes, quote, "Do you seek to have us all murdered? Don't you know that most men have converted to Islam, that the war is over, and that security is re-established?" Those who held this opinion continued to talk to their tribesmen until the latter surrendered their arms. Thereupon Ibn Khalid ordered them to be bound, and he killed some of them. However, contemporary apologists such as Yasir Qadi makes excuses for Khalid, starting out with the words "a controversy of sorts" in an attempt to try and downplay the event. Bearing in mind Khalid was responsible for a massacre, how it can be described as a controversy of sorts is belittling the situation. Despite Khalid being a senior companion of Muhammad who was sent on numerous expeditions by him, Qadi says Khalid killed the aforementioned tribe due to his lack of understanding of Islamic knowledge, and that he had misunderstood in that when they said they had become Sabians, they meant they have come out of their old religion and embraced the new one, meaning Islam. But Qadi says Khalid did not know this due to his apparent lack of knowledge and thought they were still Sabians, so he killed them. This contradicts Muslim scholar Muhammad Haikal, who was just quoted. Despite Khalid's murder and bloodthirsty behavior, Qadi goes on to praise Khalid. The article ends by saying, "Do listen intently and witness firsthand what an exemplary warrior Khalid ibn Walid was." The full link is below. Although Yasikadis says Khalid had a misunderstanding of Islamic jurisprudence, then goes on to praise him anyway, and only describes it as a controversy of sorts, as opposed to an event of brutal criminality and reprehensible that would be considered today as an act of terrorism. Some of Qadi's points remain unanswered. Number 1. Muhammad sent Khalid for the expedition. If Khalid misunderstood and as a result he massacred a group of innocent people, after all, Yasikadi admits Khalid had only a basic knowledge of the rules regarding warfare, then it is Muhammad's fault for selecting an ill-informed, uneducated Khalid and allowing him to lead the army in the expedition of Banu Jadima, which resulted in their massacre. Number 2, even if the tribe of Banu Jadima remained non-Muslim Sabian polytheists, it still was not correct to massacre them. They did not commit any crime, but because according to Islam, being a polytheist pagan is seen as a crime punishable by death, that this was the reason for attacking them and killing them. Therefore Muhammad and Khalid are still in the wrong due to their intolerance of other religions and forceful conversions at the point of the sword. In other words, as intolerance and violence are enshrined and mandated within the religion of Islam, the subsequent actions in sending out and leading expeditions to convert the people, however unintentional, due to its teachings, led to a massacre. The teachings and actions are still criminal, wicked and immoral. Ultimately, the blame still lies with Islam and Muhammad. Finally, the justification that we have become Sabians was a synonym for we have come out of our religion or apostated from the old religion and embraced a new one, in this case into Islam, still does not answer why in Sahih al-Bukhari 4372 cited earlier, when Thumama converted to Islam and was asked if he had become a Sabian, he did so by emphatically answering no, clarifying that he was a Muslim. So he made a distinction between a Muslim and a Sabian. Apologists could also argue Thumama did not know Islamic jurisprudence either and simply did not accept being called a Sabian. But even if he did, it was the same as being a Muslim anyway. So for the apologetics at least, all their bases are covered. In reality, the evidence indicates that the terms may have been interchangeable in earlier times, as Islam was taking a lot of their ideas and practices from Sabianism. At this time, it seems they were the same, but as time went on and was slowly becoming a separate identity, Muslims, as they were trying to carve out a more monotheistic route, no longer wanted to be associated with the Sabians and saw this as an insult due to its polytheistic practices. Nevertheless, it still stands in the very beginning of Islam. It may have just been Sabianism, so early Muslims, including Muhammad himself, accepted being called a Sabian. In other words, as Islam was becoming more distinct, it moved away from the Sabian title and regarded them as polytheists, which is why Khalid may have thought that the Banu Jadima were not Muslims when they cried out that they were Sabians, so he killed them. Therefore, it cannot simply be argued away, as apologists do, that Sabian just meant they apostated from their old religion, and in the case of Banu Jadima, that they had actually become Muslim. Ultimately, whether they had become Muslims or still remained as Sabians, it still stands that it was wrong for Khalid to massacre them, and Muhammad bears responsibility for the massacre. Neither one of them cannot be extirpated from the bloodshed. So in conclusion, such were the similarities that even Muhammad himself was described as a Sabian for a period, and some of his companions according to Islam's own sources. In the previous video, it was shown how the Quran intimates although they were polytheists, that the Sabians could enter heaven along with other monotheists such as Jews and Christians. The reality is, without Sabianism, Islam would not exist, as it extensively took from it. Therefore, no reference to the importance of Islam can be complete without the mention of Sabianism. Just before they were massacred by Muhammad's army in their apparent attempt to save themselves and establish kinship with the Muslims, the pagans of Banu Jadima cried out that they had converted to Sabianism. They would only do that if the terms Muslims and Sabians were interchangeable. Indeed, it seems the terms were synonymous for a period. Khalid massacres them anyway. Muhammad expresses regret for this action. Whatever the justifications made by apologists, it was wrong to massacre them, and Muhammad cannot escape the blame. He nor Khalid cannot be exculpated for their crimes. Muhammad was at fault for selecting Khalid, so he bears the ultimate responsibility for Khalid's actions.